Dawn breaks as a thin blue blade over Mount Hiei on the eve of September 29, 1571, a silent hour smothered by mist and anticipation. It is neither night nor day, but a haunted bridge between worlds. Within the ancient corridors of Enryaku-ji, the citadel of Buddhist faith rising high above Kyoto, Sister Ren kneels in prayer. Her forehead grazes lacquered cedar, long rosary beads slipping through fingers known for their poetic calligraphy, now tense with dread. The air inside the mountain temple is thick with centuries of memory. Smoldering sandalwood drifts through each hall, mingling with pine resin borne by the first breath of dawn. Usually the pre-dawn hush is a comfort. The slow, rhythmic creak of wooden floors, soft chanting echoing against paper screens, and temple bells ringing across the valleys. Not today. Today, a heavy silence reigns, punctuated only by distant, unfamiliar clicks, metallic, deliberate, echoing up through the forested slopes. There is something unnatural about this stillness. It is not the absence of noise, but its concentrated threat. From the shadows, other nuns appear ghost-like, their white robes catching flickering lamplight as they hurry through ancient passageways. Feet pad nervously over cold stone, worn smooth by the passage of generations. In the heart of Enryaku-ji, Sister Ren senses it, the mountain itself bracing for something unthinkable. From outside, the first soft smudge of smoke rises, barely visible in the blue. Not the reassuring plume of incense, but the bitter, greasy herald of war. The hairs on Ren's arms rise, the beads stilling in her palm. She listens with the animal acuity born of disaster. Her senses sharpen, the world narrows to a point. Danger is coming. In the darkness before dawn on September 29, 1571, Sister Ren pressed her forehead to the prayer hall floor and realized the silence surrounding Mount Hiei wasn't peace. It was the held breath before slaughter. We begin this testimony, nearly erased from the chronicles. Not the tale of mighty armies or legendary warlords. This is the story of the women, the nuns of Enryaku-ji, caught amid ambitions that would forever change the fate of Japan. The age of warring states, feudal Japan, is a country bleeding itself to exhaustion. The Sengoku Jidai, the warring states period, has raged for more than a century. Domains fracture, allegiances shift like sand, and warlords rise and fall with the turning of every season. In these turbulent years, power means everything. Kyoto, heart of imperial authority, has been battered by decades of conflict and intrigue. Enter Oda Nobunaga, age 37, ruthless, visionary, terrifying. His reputation precedes him like thunder before a storm. Nobunaga does not believe in compromise. His dream, to unify fractured Japan under his singular will, to sweep away all opposition, including the powerful temples and their armies. For temples like Enryaku-ji, faith is inseparable from force. Monasteries are also fortresses, walls bristling with arms, warrior monks trained for battle, abbot generals orchestrating campaigns as deft as any daimyo. The monks of Mount Hiei wield power, political, economic, and military, enough to threaten even Nobunaga's ambitions. But in the spaces between war, hidden from the clamor, live the bhikkhuni, the nuns, over 200 women, silent witnesses to the swelling tides of violence. Many, like Sister Yuki, find refuge from threatened marriages or ruined families, cloaking themselves in the mask of religious devotion. Others, like Sister Ren, inherit the task of remembering, documenting daily life in careful hand, teaching, and keeping alive a world at constant risk of being lost. Abbot Kakushin, nearing 60, leads the community with stern compassion. He knows peace can be shattered in an instant. He watches the alliances form. Enryaku-ji stands with rivals of Nobunaga, the Azai and Asakura clans. Decisions like these carry fatal consequences. The ultimatum. It arrives as autumn turns leaves bloody red. Nobunaga's messenger delivers it to the temple gates. Surrender all arms, all traitors, or face destruction. The abbot, bolstered by the faith and pride of centuries, chooses defiance. The monks believe the mountain is sacred, its history untouchable. No armies have ever taken Enryaku-ji by force. The monks arm themselves. Warriors string bows, check matchlocks brought in from Portuguese traders, sharpen blades. The warning bells ring across the valley, a tradition signaling defense, but this time, few are left to answer. Below, refugees scatter. Rumors of Oda's coming army race ahead of reality, September 29th, the hour of reckoning. When dawn fully rises, Ren looks from the highest hall and sees, with chilling clarity, the true scope of the threat. 30,000 samurai, foot soldiers, and gunners have arrived. They encircle Mount Hiei in a ring of iron and flame. Inside Enryaku-ji, the atmosphere shifts. Panic edges past discipline. Sister Ren calls to the nuns, her voice steady but desperate. You must come to the inner sanctuary. Follow quickly and quietly. Novices, elder sisters, those ill with fever, all gather in the prayer chamber where statues of Buddha stand sentinel. They clutch offerings, letters, beads, some crying silently, others stunned into immobility. Smoke thickens. What starts as a distant threat becomes immediate danger. Oda's troops, rather than charging, begin the process of annihilation not with swords, but with fire. They set blazes along the perimeter, using wind and fuel to send flames up the slopes. Monks attempt sallying attacks downhill, wielding courage over sense, but muskets cut them down before they reach enemy lines. Screams echo in the haze, swallowed by the advancing wall of heat. Inside the sanctuary, the nuns scramble. Water is scarce, but they soak their robes, fashioning crude masks. The oldest sister leads a whispered prayer, voice trembling but resolute. May we remain as we are, unswayed even by death. For a moment, faith provides armor, but the heat intensifies. The walls begin to glow with the ghost light of imminent collapse. Sister Yuki, unaccustomed to such terror, grabs Ren's arm. Are we going to die? She asks, her words carrying more than personal fear. A question for all who shelter here. In that moment, Sister Ren chooses. This sanctuary, inaccessible, windowless stone, may be a tomb. She urges her companions toward a little-known path, a winding passage through the rear of the temple, winding into ash and shadow. Along the way, the group is joined by refugees, monks' families, scholars, servants, all seeking a phantom hope of escape. Through fog and cindery air, the band emerges into a clearing, only to find themselves intercepted by Oda's organized, chillingly calm soldiers. Escape is not a struggle, but an exercise in logistics. Men and boys directed to one side, women to another. Soldiers move among the women, studying faces, selecting the youngest and healthiest, indifferent to shaved heads or sacred vows. No status, no devotion, no plea offers sanctuary now. Sister Yuki is seized, her hands torn away from Ren's. Her last cry is a curse and an invocation, heard only by those forced to look away. The remaining nuns avert their eyes, grief already blooming as a physical ache. The daylight burns away, yielding to a night that carries no promise of rest. Surviving nuns and refugees scatter into ravines, clutching each other and memories sharpened by trauma. Search parties comb the slopes, their torches carving up the darkness, their laughter and jeers punctuating every discovery. For those hidden beneath roots and rocks, the night is a lesson in horror. From the occupied camps, the sounds of violence, organized and relentless, travel, interspersed with the periodic ring of blades. Hidden survivors nurse wounds both apparent and concealed. Shattered faith, broken bodies, hearts grown numb. Yet, even here, some agency remains. A handful of nuns produce the herb used for centuries in Buddhist ritual, a tea whose bitterness promises oblivion. Together they drink, hands joined, the final act of defiance and solidarity. Even as death approaches, they choose dignity over surrender. As day breaks, Mount Hiei stands transformed, a world razed, sacred halls eradicated, every structure burning or collapsed. The stench of ash and carnage chokes the air. Few have survived, and the survivors stumble through a landscape haunted by spectral memories and the bitter taste of lost hope. Oda's forces, mission accomplished, withdraw methodically. Scouts linger for days to ensure no organized resistance remains. Any stragglers are consigned to oblivion, dispatched with clinical indifference. Weeks later, Ren and a handful of survivors, their numbers perhaps less than 200 from an original population in the thousands, return. The temple, once alive with sound and meaning, is now a tomb. The soil oozes black rot. Even the wind seems wary. Among the wreckage they find corpses, some badly decomposed, some marked by unmistakable evidence of the ordeals suffered in those final hours. Sister Yuki is found, her body scarred not just by violence, but by the silence imposed in its aftermath. Survivors bury the dead, often with little ceremony. The act becomes an assertion of memory. Each prayer, each mound of earth, not mourning, but resistance. Yet the greater horror lingers. The abbot's successor, battered by the desire for institutional survival, obeys the dictates of the triumphant rulers. The story of the slain nuns, their courage, agony, and fate, is neither commemorated nor recounted. The records are scrubbed. In the decades that follow, even the mention of non-combatant deaths is minimized. Warrior monks, political consequences, necessary force. The fate of women, of the bhikkhuni, vanishes from chronicles, only to be kept alive in the scattered whispers of folk memory and forbidden diaries. For Sister Ren, the years bring silence. She lives out her remaining days at a rural temple, her surviving testimony seized and locked away. In the margins of official history, her ghost, and those of her sisters, linger, waiting for the world to care enough to remember. But some evidence will not stay buried. Some stories are buried not just in silence, but in soil itself. For years after the massacre on Mount Hiei, the survivors live in fear of retribution if they dare whisper what was done to them. The few records kept, scribbled notes, diaries, even shreds of temple logs, are seized by officials bent on consolidating power and controlling the narrative. Words are erased, voices stifled, yet the ground will never fully forget. Decades, centuries pass. The scorched earth slowly heals, grass pushing through ash, new shrines rebuilt over the old. Most who visit have no inkling what was lost, what bones lie beneath their feet. But the cycle of archaeological discovery waits for no one. In 1923, a railway crew scraping the base of Mount Hiei for the Keihan line stumbles upon something unlisted on any survey, a mass grave, deep and tangled, holding at least 127 skeletons. The bones tell their own story, a tale not of soldiers in ceremonial armor, but women, some young, some old, fractured by blows, limbs bound, marked by the unmistakable traces of violence and hurried death. Modern forensic teams study the remains. At least 31 are confirmed female, based on pelvis structure and dental wear. The youngest appear to be in their late teens, girls likely sheltering with nuns or nuns themselves, the sacred shaved head indistinguishable to the ravages of time. Skeletal trauma evidences not battle wounds, but execution, skulls crushed, arms snapped. The careful arrangement of remains, laid together in a hurried burying, suggests not a victorious ritual, but a frenzied attempt at erasure. Other fragments surface. In the faded lines of the Jesuit Louis Froi's correspondence, a foreign missionary who watched and wrote, he admits satisfaction at the massacre, framing it as a decisive blow against Buddhist militarism and opposition to Christian expansion. The Shincho Koki, Nobunaga's family chronicle, mentions women and children in passing. But the words are sterile, stripped of detail and emotion, a generation-old attempt to technicalize atrocity into bland officialdom. But the oral traditions cannot be managed so easily. In the villages around Mount Hiei, the story grows into shadowy legend, never written, only spoken. Old women warn against walking certain ravines at dusk, claiming that ghostly sisters in white still wander, unable to rest. Local priests deliver annual memorial prayers for all who died without confession. None name the nuns, yet their absence, the missing, unspoken, makes the silence itself a memorial. Time passes. Japan itself transforms. Nobunaga falls, assassinated by his own, haunted by blood. The Tokugawa regime rises, preferring peace and order to the turmoil of the warring states. Surviving nuns scatter across the country, some joining smaller temples in distant provinces, many living the rest of their days under the weight of stories they cannot share. Their trauma, unhealed, undiscussed, bleeds slowly into the DNA of villages and monastic communities. A memory so painful it soon takes on mythic shape. Over the years, the specifics fade, but the legacy persists. By the 19th century, Mount Hiei's temples have been rebuilt and sanitized, the memory of the massacre officially framed as a decisive action against militant monks. School children learn of Oda Nobunaga's brilliance, his role in unifying Japan, the relentless march of progress. The nuns, however, are allotted only a passing mention, if they are mentioned at all. Gendered violence, the fate met by the bhikkhuni, becomes regrettable collateral, rendered invisible by the logic of history books that favor victors and warriors. Yet, for those willing to look deeper, the mountain does not keep all its secrets. In rare protected archives, historians uncover a singular diary, scorched at the edges, full of desperate scribbles and unfinished prayers. Believed to be the remnants of Sister Ren's account, smuggled from temple to temple over decades, it catalogs the nights of terror, the failed escapes, the cries of sisters lost to camps, and the long-haunted silences that followed. A line stands out, even amid the incompleteness, a plea: heaven did not protect us, but earth will remember. The silence, then, is not just absence, but assertion, a refusal to let erasure reign. As feminist historians, beginning in the late 20th century, begin pushing for recognition of women's specific suffering, the story of Mount Hiei's nuns surfaces anew. Academic articles reveal the forensic evidence, the machinations of official records, and the persistent undercurrent of denial and shame that kept their fates hidden throughout the generations. Where textbooks strip detail, scholars restore it, though the wider populace, the tourists on the mountain paths, still rarely hear the truth. The massacre at Mount Hiei set a precedent, a pattern endlessly repeated in the wars to come. At Nagashima, in 1574, the same tactics emerge: siege, fire, slaughter. 20,000 inhabitants, whole families, monks, nuns, commoners, wiped out. There too, official chronicles frame the event as a necessity, focusing attention on military objectives and omitting the fate of non-combatants. In siege after siege, the ends justify means, logic reigns, erasing the distinct suffering of women, children, and the religious who did not bear arms. The consequences ripple outward. Buddhist political power in Japan is effectively broken, a calculation made in blood and smoke. Temples, once mighty, become spiritual centers only, forbidden to train or arm warrior monks. In the vacuum left behind, new rules emerge: peace, order, but also denial, an insistence on collective harmony that cannot bear the contamination of atrocity. To acknowledge Mount Hiei's truth is to undermine not just the legacy of Nobunaga, but the institutional survival of Buddhist orders and the national progress of unified Japan. Cultural memory alters too. In the shadow of the new shrines, stories shift. Where once nuns walked proudly in town, teaching, healing, teaching children spiritual discipline, now they are figures of legend, specters haunting ravines and lost prayer halls. Older residents recall nights when the wind seems to carry voices, weeping and prayer tangled together, growing dense in the valleys. Some families quietly mark September 29th with private offerings, flowers at the edge of forbidden ground, prayers spoken only in whispers. Some wounds, however, remain open. Archaeological surveys find that in certain ravines, flowers will not grow. Soil turns hard and impenetrable, stubbornly refusing new life. Locals, aware of the old folklore, explain these absences as the result of mountain memory, a kind of sacred contamination. Whether scientific or spiritual, the phenomenon stands as a natural memorial, as real and enduring as any stone marker. In academic circles, the evidence mounts. Skeletal remains from the Keihan site reveal patterns of fracture and trauma that mirror contemporary accounts of violence inflicted on non-combatants. Dental analysis suggests the nuns ate poorly, living on rice and wild greens, suffering slow starvation even before the massacre. Analysis of burial depth and arrangement marks these graves as hurried, almost ashamed, the byproducts of denial and enforced silence. Beyond physical evidence, scholars note the gaps in records. The Shincho Koki, central to Nobunaga's history, treats the massacre with chilling brevity. All were burned to ash. It notes, no Buddha, shrine, monk, or sutra remained. Portuguese missionaries, keen to frame the destruction in religious political terms, write gleefully, their lack of empathy a stain on even their own legacy. Reconstruction documents from the 1580s mention the return of only 200 survivors, a statistic devoid of context, emotion, or consequence. This pattern, the minimizing of atrocities, the erasure of gendered experience, becomes a blueprint for remembrance and forgetting in Japan's history. Textbooks will always favor the actions of powerful men, justifying violence in pursuit of consolidation or progress. The fate of nuns, symbols of both spiritual devotion and inconvenient suffering, can be ignored, their blood washed away by the convenience of official canon. But beneath the mountain's surface, the truth pulses. In the annual ceremonies, bells ring for all who perished. No names are spoken, no specifics given. Yet for those who know, each toll is a protest, a quiet, insistent demand that history widen its gaze. The survivors, now centuries removed, linger through legacy. The trauma lived by Sister Ren and her sisters is passed in coded stories, in poems about women who braved death for their beliefs, in folk songs about the white shadows haunting mountain passes. Silence becomes not just absence but resistance, the refusal to let official narrative be the last word. What lessons emerge from stories like these? For viewers of Epoch Ensemble, drawn to the darkest corners of history, Mount Hiei's nuns are more than casualties. They are the unwitting chroniclers of the price of progress, unity, and denial. Their suffering, muted, suppressed, transformed by rumor and legend, is a warning against any story too neatly packaged, any heroism too unblemished by consequence. And so, the narrative circles back, inviting reflection. What histories in our own cultures have been cleansed, rewritten? What heroes exalted at the expense of the silenced, the erased? Where does official memory end and responsibility begin? A final echo. Every September on Mount Hiei, as dusk settles, the rebuilt temples ring their bells. The sound travels over old stones, across ravines where wildflowers will not grow. Tourists snap photos, marvel at the architecture, perhaps read the brief plaques commemorating the restoration after disaster. Yet few stop to wonder what the disaster truly was, whose bones are buried beneath the footpaths, whose voices speak through wind and shadow. Sister Ren, her memory forbidden from the record, is not absent. She is present in every silence. Her plea that Earth remember stands etched in the landscape itself, a defiance more enduring than any sermon or edict. The nuns who died with her are not just statistics, but testimony, proof that the worst damage inflicted by atrocity is in what is left unnamed and unexplained. As the bells ring, the ritual sounds of commemoration and forgetting, those willing to listen can hear the story that official history tried so hard to erase. Heaven did not protect us, but Earth will remember. For viewers of Epoch Ensemble, let this be a call to action. Which buried stories deserve resurrection? Which silenced voices must be heard? What truths linger, waiting for excavation and recognition? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Which moments in history struck you as most emblematic of erasure or denial? Which figures should we examine next? Whose legacy carries the double edge of progress and obliteration? For more testimonies wrung from silence, more histories exiled from comfort, subscribe. Each episode, each investigation, is an act of memory, a demand for attention that the official record so often fails to give. The nuns of Mount Hiei do not rest. In the ringing of temple bells, in the silence of deep ravines, in the stubborn absence of wildflowers, they speak to those unwilling to look away. For as long as the mountain stands, as long as the wind carries memory, their story is not truly finished. September comes again. The shrines gleam, the bells are dutiful. But beneath the reconstructed halls, the earth contains more than roots and insects. It holds ash, blood, voices, and the silent residue of atrocity. The soil, year after year, remembers every scream. Let this documentary, this act of witness, stand as proof. The silence you hear is not absence, but history demanding to be heard.